And no matter where you are in the world, tonight people are doing this as they light the candles with these 7 symbols. And make sure whatever you get your candle holder, that you get it from a black person. That's been made by a black person. You know, flip them over now and make sure they're not made in China and Taiwan. I've seen it like they're made everywhere. And if you don't know where it's made from, don't buy it. If it's questionable origin, do not buy it. That means you're not practicing Kwanzaa. You shouldn't buy your culture from other people. So if you don't know where it's from, or if you can't afford one, make it yourself. Then it's a guarantee it's African if you make it, because you're African. So just make it yourself. But don't buy them. You know, don't go out there and buy the Jewish ones and plug the holes up. I've seen that. Or is this terrible? Don't even do that. You know, make sure you use your own culture, come from your own people. If not, you're not practicing Kwanzaa. Particularly Ujamaa. We have black stores and black vendors everywhere where you can get the candle holder if you want to buy one. If not, make it. Use your own kulumba. Use one of the principles. But do not buy them from these big box stores that are selling them real cheap and real convenient, and Walmart, Hallmark, all those stores. I don't even buy cards from there. Go to the black bookstores, go to black vendors. Anything you need for Kwanzaa, if you can't get it from a black person, do without it first. And that's how we stop what we call the corporate penetration of the celebration. That's how we stop the corporate making it, commercializing it. And then you don't need a lot of gifts for Kwanzaa. The last symbol is the gifts, the zawadis. And I saved that for last because we don't focus on gifts during Kwanzaa. We already got one gift-giving holiday. It's totally out of control. We don't need to create another one. So the gifts are not the major thing for Kwanzaa for the children. What's major? The children don't need gifts. They need these values. So you focus on the values. But if you're giving gifts, you give 2 types of gifts. And the gifts are given for a reason. Commitments made and commitments kept. On the last day of Kwanzaa, January 1st, everybody sits around and they meditate and they recommit and they see how they can make their life better. And they make commitments for the coming year. That, you know, I'm going to try and do this better. I'm trying to help out better. Children, I'm going to try and bring these grades up. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to call my grandma more. They make a commitment that brings the family together or to strengthen them. And at the end of the year, we do a reassessment and see how we did. So the gifts given to children are for commitments made and commitments kept. And there are 2 types of gifts. It should be a heritage symbol, a cultural symbol, something that comes from the history and their culture. And try and find out the origins of what you're giving them. So not only give them the gift, you say this comes from Ghana and it was used from this. This comes from Kenya and it's used for that. So they get education along with the gift. Or it can be an educational gift of a book, money put aside for tuition, buy them a bunch of school tokens to get back and forth to school. Something that lets them know the value of education. So there are the 2 types of gifts. You can give them African jewelry as a gift, not bling bling and all that kind of stuff. Something that's a heritage. So those are the 7 symbols. And it's very important that we consciously do this during Kwanzaa, even though we should live the values throughout the years, throughout the year. Because these 7 principles aren't something we need just for 7 days in December. We need them for 365 days of the year. Just like we have to push ourselves to be African. And I was just talking to the sister, Dr. Karenga, the other night. He said something. I had to meet with him the next morning for breakfast. And it just troubled me all night. He said at the event, it was he did a beautiful discussion about spirituality and us being African. And he said, we are Americans by habit, Africans by choice. And I'm like, no, we're just African, you know. We're African, and not just the blood that we're African. We just do things, we just know we're African. And so we had over breakfast, I'm just like going back and forth. He said, no. He said, it's by choice you are African. He said, you can be American without even thinking about it. It's a habit. He said, it takes no thought into being American. Everything's right there for you. He said, but for you to be an African in this setting, you have to consciously make that choice on how you're going to dress, how you're going to carry yourself, how you're going to relate to your traditions and your elders. He said, all of that is counter to being an American. He says, you have to consciously be an African. He said, just being born one is no guarantee. He said, because you got more Africans, more American than the Americans. So he said, to actually be a conscious African is a choice. It's not a birthright. You have to decide that you want to respect traditions. You want to honor your ancestors. You believe you're divinely chosen. You believe that you're the oldest people in the world, the first one that the Creator created. You know, all these things, it has to be a conscious choice to choose that, because there's alternatives that contradict all of that. And we had to talk over this. We couldn't even eat breakfast going into detail on how many conscious decisions we have to make to be African. Because it's so easy just to be an American. It's a habit. He says it's automatic. He said, now you get up every morning, you can just put on Western clothes and go on about your business. He said, or you can put on your own ethnic clothes and accept the risk and the blessings that come with that. Because people on your job look at you differently. Right? So he says a penalty to it. He said, but you get a blessing from your ancestors. So here we were talking about these choices you have to make to be an African in this context. It's not automatic. So every time you do something African in an anti-African context, he says a conscious choice. He says a higher level of operating, a higher level of consciousness. He said, but to be an American, he said, don't take any thought. He said, they get all the thinking for you. Everything's automatic. You don't even have to think. You're on automatic. Go to work, come home. Don't know your neighbors. Don't do this. You know, you're on automatic. He said, but to be African, you have to consciously think, how can I stay connected to my children? How can I stay connected to the ancestors? So he said, you have to choose that. And that was his lesson for me this year. I always try and pick a lesson from him every year, or how to get deeper into being more African. And that was like, this blew me away. Because at first I was like disagreeing with him. But the more we talked about it, then I watched myself in the morning and what I do. And then I said, how would I do this differently if I wasn't conscious that I was a black woman? How not to degrade myself? You know, how to make sure that people treat me in a respectful way. I have to consciously think about that. Then I look at the sisters I know don't do that. They just automatically think that's not important because they're just American. And so that's one of the things Kwanzaa does. It helps us reconnect to what it means to be African. And it's more than just throwing some kente on, mud cloth, you know, or that kind of stuff. It's deeper. It's like consciously choosing to be a certain type of person in the world. So that's what I wanted to share about Kwanzaa. If anybody has any questions about the holiday or the celebration, I certainly would do that. I'll be here to the end of the program, but if anybody want to ask anything in particular. White. What was that?
It was so much information. We had a Kwanzaa celebration where I worked the other day, and we had a phone call from some Jewish folks because they're having a big Jewish convention in town with all the teenagers, and they wanted to come by our community, just I guess to check us out, really, checking out the community and whatnot. And they had they showed us the meaning of Hanukkah, and we showed them the meaning of Kwanzaa, and that went over really well. But I thought that the red was for the people, and the green was for the land. And the guy young boy wanted to know, because I lived the green first, so I didn't know no better. And he said, why does the land come before the people? And I said, well, I'm not really sure. I don't want to lie. But if you notice, all the wars and everything is always about the land. The land always seems so important. So maybe the green goes first because we want to remember how important keeping our own land is. I kind of made that up. That's what it felt like. That's what it felt like. But I'm glad to hear the real story because I don't want to
perpetrate fraud. That's just for Kwanzaa, that the black comes first. And the traditional flags, the red comes first. The flag that Garvey gave us is red, black, and green. So people are thinking about that. But for Kwanzaa, the people come first because it's African-centered. The people have to come first. But with the Republic of New Africa, who believed that land was important, their flag has the green first. So it's where you place your priorities organizationally. From our organization, the people have to come first. You know, but Garvey's flag, it was red, and the history of the red, black, and green with Garvey comes from ancient Egypt. It's the way that the Nile flows. When it first flows, it's very red, very murky with the soil, right? And then it starts to settle down, right? No, when it first flows, it's black, very, very muddy. And then it starts to clean. When it starts to clean itself, it gets red. But when it's really clean, it's this beautiful green. So when you read early Garvey literature and everything like that, you see they studied this, and it's the color of the ancient Egyptian banners and flags, because that's the flow of the Nile. And so this has very important